What's up guys, my name is Lex Veldhuis and welcome to another episode of Lex Reflects. Today we're going to take another deeper dive into the big game. We're going to look at the three biggest spots that I played against Vanessa Russo. Vanessa and I collided quite a few times in the big game, and today we're going to find out why I think we both played our hands tragically bad. The setting is 2010, Las Vegas, the big game, $100,000 buy-in.
Oh, that's aces.
I've seen many people in the comments ask if the big game was real money, if I played my own money. I played 100% of my own action, and I really liked it that way. I always played very aggressive, and I didn't want to have to answer to anyone or explain why I played a certain style or why I spewed in certain spots.
It's kind of a weird spot.
Lex calls.
See Vanessa here with pocket aces, obviously very strong. I make a standard defend, share a little moment.
Lex has made a pretty standard defend.
Yeah.
4-king tray, top two pair for Lex.
Lex has outflopped aces.
And fires 2,500.
All right, and I really think that immediately the strategy here gets a little bit murky. I don't really have a whole lot of strong hands on this board compared to Vanessa. Therefore, I think I want to check very often. I also want to check my strong hands because this allows me to start check raising. So this is a perfect check raise candidate. There's some draws on the board, and like I said, I'm going to have to check this board quite often. This also allows me to start playing hands like 5-7 suited, hands with a gut shot, straight draws that way. Once I lead here, I don't really have that option. Also, it's a very dynamic board. There's a lot of bad turns for my hand, so it doesn't really play into that well either.
Vanessa's in a tough spot here. There's no way for her to know her aces are beat. If she doesn't tread lightly, she could lose a monster pot.
Vanessa calls.
Vanessa has a really dynamic board versus the big blind as well, so I like the fact that she just flat calls. It's possibly the best decision in this whole hand, apart from the pre-flop raise and call.
Lex still has to like his two pair.
All right, so this is definitely a little bit of a tough situation. I'm almost forced to start betting again because of my lead on the flop. If I check, I can't really check raise. Check calling feels awful because then my hands are a little bit tight on the river. I like the fact that I go a little bit bigger here. Obviously, it's very dynamic. Vanessa can also have backdoor hearts in her hand that she called the flop with. She can also have ace-queen, some other hands that I beat, obviously. The queen also introduces some strong hands for her, though, so it's definitely not a great turn for me.
Lex bets 7,700.
I bet pots.
Vanessa might be thinking about putting in a raise here, but Lex has played this hand pretty strong. He fired on the flop and on the turn. So the pot's already pretty big. Let's see what she decides to do.
I don't think Vanessa has any reason to raise. If she raises, she gets rid of my weak hands, and she's going to run into all my big blind monsters. So I like her flat here.
Vanessa may be playing it safe now rather than slow.
The river and the board pairs, giving Vanessa the edge.
It's a brutal card for Lex. He just got counterfeited, and because the board paired smaller than his fours, he's got to put Vanessa on aces to know it.
Lex bets. And sees the bad news.
Once somebody calls that fast, you still could be very good with your king 4. I think my value bet's absolutely standard. There's a ton of hands I can still beat. Vanessa's going to call a lot with the king, and even with the queen. All the draws miss. The river misses straight draws. It misses both flush draws as well. So I think Vanessa's going to be very prone to hero calling here. The one thing that I would have liked from her perspective is for her to consider a raise. I'm not going to have that many strong hands on this board. If you look at the actual full houses that I have, they're at a very bare minimum looking at my lead on the flop as well. She could have definitely considered a raise because she could have had missed diamonds or hearts herself. I really hate the way I played this hand, and I think I was just stuck in betting gear. Not that great, but we live, we learn, and in the end, it was also just an unlucky spot. The next hand is one of my least favorite hands to watch from the big game. I think we both played this hand terribly bad, and I think that pretty much every single decision that we make is bad. So let's just dive straight into it and get it over with. I'm opening the Jack 3 suited, which is really not an open. I do think that the open is even better than the call because 9-5 suited is really speculative at this point. I think when you play a hyper-aggressive player, the one thing you don't want to do is start playing weaker hands than you actually should. When she plays a hand like 9-5, she's really banking on the fact that she can take the pot away from me at a certain point, but that's just not going to happen if you looked at my playing style. I was firing every river, every turn, so 9-5 is just way too weak.
Lex whiffed, but it's not going to stop him from continuing, I don't think.
All right, so this is definitely not a board I want to bet. Vanessa hits this board very hard. Even her weaker hands like Queen 9 are going to have straight draws. King 9 is going to have a gut shot. She interacts with the 10 really well. all her suited connectors make pair, gut shots, straights, everything. So this is definitely not a board for me to be betting. I even make the mistake worse by over betting because now I just blow up the pot versus a range that's stronger than mine. If I ever bet this flop, it should probably be a small bet. So pretty much hate every decision of mine.
There's the call.
The funny thing is, though, my bet sizing does force her to fold this hand. There's not a spade on the board as well, so she doesn't have any backdoor flush draws. So she's really playing a shitty straight draw with just a naked 9. Like I said earlier, she's also probably not going to get the chance to take the pot away from me because I'm a hyper-aggressive player. So I think both of us make really big mistakes here.
Jack of clubs.
Lex jumps way ahead with top pair. It'll be harder to make him fold if Vanessa's going to follow through with her float.
Lex fires 10,800.
Remember how I said that I thought that every single street we both make a mistake? You might look at this and see, oh, you make top pair, so this is a good bet. Now, given the circumstance of the big game back then, I do think that it was really good for me to get value from something like this. But I really think if you look at the hand theoretically, and I would step outside of my aggressive self for a second and look at the way she approaches the hand, I really think a bet is bad. At this point, I force her to fold a 6 or an 8, and I really thin her range to the really strong parts. I'm only compounding on my mistake, and I'm going to put myself in a really tough river position by blowing the hand up. I allow her to fold all her really weak hands and her bluffs, and Jack 3 just isn't strong enough to build a pot with here. So I don't like my bet on the turn.
Vanessa's now open-ended.
Again, Vanessa's going to have to fold.
She's got a bona fide draw, so she can add a semi-bluff to her options.
Started the hand with how much?
100, around 100. And this really illustrates why she can't really float the flop with 9-5. It's one of the best turns for her because now she's not only gut shotted, she's open-ended, which is a 1-card straight draw, and she's going to have a 9 a lot. So once she actually hits, it's going to be hard for her to get paid off. And again, you can see that I fired a second barrel, taking the bluff spot away from her. This is exactly why she should have gone away from the hand pre-flop, because 9-5 is just terrible and it's not going to have the playability and the odds to make a good hand.
And that card on the river is the king of clubs.
At this point, I still think that Vanessa could have some draws. Obviously, there's still a diamond draw on board. She could call me with a hand like 10-9, 8-9, that sort of thing, but it's not great to get called. And this exactly illustrates why it's not that great to bet the turn. I'm really banking on the fact for the river to go check, but obviously she can still turn hands into bluffs.
The king doesn't improve anyone's hand, but it's an overcard, and it does complete a gut shot.
Lex checks.
Lex is playing cautiously now.
At this point, I do think that my check here on the river is the first good thing I do. At this point, the only thing I'm going to get value from is if she bluffs at the pot. Because if I bet, she's just easily going to fold any 6, 8, or 10. I don't beat any other jack, so there's no point in getting value from that. I really hate this hand. I just want to say that again because I'm looking at it. It just hurts my eyes. So this is the only good part that I do, though.
Vanessa fires 25,000.
Don't expect her to have any really weak hands. And if you think about it, the way it talks about the turn, the only really weak hands that she is going to have are going to be hands with a pair in it, right? So if she has a hand like 10-9 or 8-9, and I think against me, she's just going to check that down and hoping that it wins. So from my perspective, also back then, once she bets here, she's in really the strong part of her range. She doesn't have that many very sort of natural bluffs. Maybe she has a hand like 5-4 of diamonds, but it's very unlikely. At this point, I really feel that I have a lot better hands to call with. For instance, I could have a hand like King-Queen. I could have a hand like top pair or a second pair with diamonds that could call. Or I could have a hand that blocks some straights. So thinking about a hand like Jack-9, King-9, 10-9, Queen-Jack, any of those. I don't think Jack-3 qualifies. I think Jack-3 doesn't block shit. And I think it's a really bad hand. So all in all, I think that we should both forget about this hand. But I do realize that I just made a YouTube video about it to keep it alive a little bit longer. I make a quick fold. I do think that it's fine. I think that like I said, my hand doesn't really have any good call probabilities. And I can pick different hands for it. It's probably indifferent. I don't think that there's going to be a whole big difference in profitability if I call or fold, but I don't think that matters. I think that this hand is just one big pile of bad decisions on top of the other. So, all right, let's see if the next hand is a little bit better between me and Vanessa. I think that this next hand is very interesting because the hand is multi-way. This means there's multiple ranges or groups of hands to take into account. And because there's some really aggressive players involved, it's also a little bit easier to determine where the weakness is going to be in this hand. So let's just jump straight in and take a look at it.
Okay, I think I screwed your whole plan up already.
We see Daniel Negreanu Gonna open with the ace-4 suited, all very standard.
Was that fun for you?
It's fine.
Did you enjoy But you enjoyed it, having the money out there like a crazy gambler. 800 in the dark. It was fun.
Scott calls, also with ace-4 suited.
Scott Seaver can really go both ways with this hand, which you see. Tal Brunson can also go both ways with his hand, but it's really not his style to raise a hand like King Queen off.
Pocket sixes for Lex.
Sixes plays perfectly as a flat call here because it plays very well multi-way. I don't really need to blow up the pot. Deep stack dish out of position. I don't block any good hands.
Things could get pretty interesting here as everyone's got a bona fide hand.
So I'd pretty much be bluffing with a pretty shitty hand that's not that easy to play in a big pot. But very easy to play in a small pot.
Raise pot, whatever that is.
So call 12, then 24, 48.
66 more.
66 more.
I got it before you did. What? What? Hey. I counted up before he did. What does that get me?
All right, so I really think that at this point, it starts going a little bit off grid. I really hate the raise here from Vanessa Russo. She has the perfect hand also to just go multi-way. Eights are going to flop monsters. They're pretty easy to navigate. The problem is, if she raises, she doesn't block any strong hands. There's no, she doesn't block any ace-queen type combinations. The playability of the hand is not that great. It's not going to be an overpair very often. She's really going to have to hit a set to be able to do something. The hands that she does block are like 10-8 suited, 8-9 suited, 8-7 suited, which is exactly what you want your opponent to have in these like multi-way race scenarios. So the eights don't really have any redeeming factors here, and one of the things that really tripped me up this hand is that I didn't think she would raise 7, 8s, or 9s. I remember vividly thinking that during this hand. Now this is where it gets interesting. Because
what's the cheesy line? Like that and a buck will get you a cup of coffee.
Now I think there's going to be a lot of clarity on where Negreanu and Scott Seaver are in this hand.
Showing how inane this whole awesome spot is.
Negreanu has 3 people behind him left to act. So you'd have to imagine if he calls here, he's not going to do that with aces, kings, ace-king, queens, jacks, anything strong pretty much, right? Because he has 3 people left behind him. And it's going to be a disaster for him to go to the flop multi-way. So we can pretty much discount Negreanu's range in terms of strength.
66
The
more.
same thing is true for Scott Seaver here. If Scott Seaver did slow play a hand and was trapping to maybe trap me as an aggressive player behind him, then he's going to make a move now because there's a lot of money in the pot and he doesn't want to play a pot 4 or 5 ways. Tal Brunson makes a good fold, gets rid of the king queen off, and now it's back to me.
Lex with his sixes is certainly getting the right price.
I'll pot.
What are you doing now?
I'm potting. He's pot.
Oh, really?
It puts them all in.
Lex re-raises to nearly 41,000.
I think you can really tell from Daniel's reaction there that they were surprised that I potted. And what I'm saying about their range is very much true about mine as well. I really don't think that I would have flatted a lot of monsters from the small blind. There's no way I'm going to have 10s or jacks or ace-king or name any good hand there because I'm just going to pot it pre-flop. I'm out of position, we're deep stacked, I want to get some value. Also, if I flat the small blind, the big blind is going to come along often. And I'm going to play out of position against 4 people. So at this point, what I'm doing is I'm making a move against $16,000 of dead money, aka the blinds, antes, and Scott Seavers and Daniel Negreanu's money, and I'm attacking a range that could contain a lot of bluffs.
What do you mean?
If I were to raise, like in other words, what would be the
It would
raise
basically
pot
put
right
you
now?
all in.
Yeah.
It would basically put you all in.
That wouldn't put me all in. I had 210 before, 220 before the end. Yeah.
I don't think people are going to play a flop when you make a 139. you'd be surprised what I do.
Oh, that missed it.
I thought the only pairs that I would be up against for Vanessa Russo were 10s through aces, and there's going to be a bunch of overcards.
Free pot.
Now also remember, there's only 6 combinations of pocket aces, but there's 16 combinations of ace-king, 16 combinations of ace-10. So a lot of her high cards and bluffs that are in there, I really thought that the dead money in the pot would really make good for that, and it would be a problem for me. It was a bit of a shocker for me that she did end up having pocket eights because of what I said earlier, but I really think that I fall in a classic trap here. That's actually a thing you have to really be careful about when you start playing poker. Sometimes when you get in a situation, you look at something, I look at Russo's range, I see dead money, I see dead money, and I think to myself, this is great, I can just pick this up right now, not knowing that my range is also not strong. I don't think that she would, but to be very honest with you, Vanessa Russo could easily just call this off with Queen Jack suited because she's not going to be dominated. I'm going to be so heavy on the Ace 5 suited or the pocket sevens, pocket eights, exactly what I have. So I think my range is really transparent. It's a very easy call for her with eights, obviously. But even with the less strong hands in her range, you could easily just peel this off. She has the dead money also from Scott and Daniel to back this up. My range is absolute dust because I flatted the small blind, and she already has a lot of money invested herself. So I really don't like her raise pre-flop, but I really hate my all-in here. I made a classic mistake of just looking at a situation and really just thinking that I could go for it.
You said you had like 215?
Something like that before the hand.
The funny thing is that Scott goes in the tank here, and he has a pretty shitty hand, but I really think that Scott's just really unsure about my raising range. I do think that it's a little bit silly for him to go in the tank this long.
Don't think he can really call or raise. He might be just trying to make Vanessa and Lex sweat for the fun of it.
So nonchalant. I've been happier to snap you off.
I mean, Scott's saying that he would snap me off, but he'd been in World of Hurt. I do think that's a little bit...
And Lex is in for the rest of
Do we
his.
show?
I think generally it's a pretty big mistake in Scott's idea there that he can just snap it off, because my range is going to be very heavily hands like ace-8 suited, or maybe a pocket pair like I have. So he would actually be in trouble with his hand versus mine. But Vanessa Russo has a very easy hand.
What?
We get it all in.
Gotta give Vanessa credit. She made the right read and made the right move to isolate Lex, and now she's in a great spot to bust him and win a huge pot.
Graunu's frustrated for no reason yet. Now he has a reason to be frustrated.
I flopped the joint. Dang. Had a feeling too.
Daniel would have flopped the ace-high flush.
The nuts. The absolute nuts.
Wow.
It's an amazing spot.
Wouldn't have mattered anyway, because he's not going to have action from any hand, so
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying as it turned
it's
out.
silly to be super upset, of course.
Oh, I would have had the nuts.
The turn gives Vanessa a set and a pot worth nearly 100 grand. And a meaningless 3 on the river.
Yeah, you ruined. They had this all planned, and you were just supposed to call.
Sorry, what do you want from me? There's so much in there. It looks so good.
First National Bank of Daniel just handed 100K to Lex to stay in the game.
All right, so after this hand, I'm going to have to reload. Obviously, when you travel the world, you don't bring $400,000, $500,000 with you. So Negranu and I had a pre-agreement that if I was going to be busted, that he would have some extra cash that we would just swap somewhere else. I figured to clear this up because this moment, for some reason that's unbeknownst to me, this moment actually created so much talk sometimes, where people would post a meme or a hater would say something. But I'm actually really proud of the fact that I played 100% of my own money back then. Definitely wasn't a smart decision, because the stakes were way too high for that, and this game was too large of a part of my bankroll. But I'm really proud of the fact that I put so much stock in myself, and I really figured I could put a dent in those games. Also, these games actually got me in a ton of other cash games because I was so much action. But I don't know, I just always kind of wanted to clear this up, because that came up sometimes, and they put it so in vision of him handing me the money. Anyway, those were 3 pretty brutal hands. I really hated the hands that I played against Vanessa, also because I didn't really like the way she played it, but it just felt clumsy on top of clumsy, and I really do think that these are some of my own weakest hands that I played. I do think that back then I was like a little bit more salty towards the way she played it versus me, but I think it's important to have some accountability, and I think I made a lot of mistakes in those hands as well. If you look at the way I mean, the king 4 hand is absolutely fine apart from the flop lead, but if you look at the jack 3 hand, I pretty much misplay every step of the way until the river, and in this hand also I should just flat it and it would have been perfect. And I definitely think that it played part that I was down to 40k from my 100k stack, and that I was looking for some sort of like easy double up scenario, or at least get a lot of money in a spot that looked decent. But that's not the way you should play, especially not when you're playing the highest stakes of your life. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna combine another few hands for the next video, or maybe I'm gonna pick a really big pot, who knows. Tune in next time. Please like and subscribe. I really hope you enjoy the new range of content, and see you guys next time.
Never folding 10s ever again in that spot.
You didn't have 10s.
No, I just had deuce 4. Just for the fun of it, I did all this. Just to torture me? Yeah, just to torture you.